for those who can stay. The cast of, some of the cast of 7 Jewish Children, which is going on tomorrow night in the Abbey Theatre at 9:45 p.m, have to go to a rehearsal now, so they apologise and have to leave straight away. We are very honoured to have here with us KHALIL, the playwright, who has come from London to be with us tonight. And now, for those who would like to stay, we have a post-show conversation involving the cast and playwright KHALIL. Thank you very much.
I'll just start. Yeah, please. It's because it's a very short play, so it reads to me like the kind of perfection of a short story. Like, it doesn't have the length of the novel. But you could have written a longer play if you had. I mean, and it would bear a much longer play. Why did you choose such a short format?
Yeah, good question. It was an idea that I had quite a long time ago, and I had heard that this it's not a singular case. It happens quite frequently in Palestine. It happens quite frequently in Palestine that Israeli settlers might move into a house, and then a court would rule that the Palestinians would have to share their home. And I thought, wow, what a brilliant idea for a drama. And there's also, I don't know if any of you know, the old English comedy called Steptoe and Son. Yeah. My dad was a massive fan of that, and I watched a lot of it growing up. And there's a brilliant episode where the father and son have a big fight, and they draw a line down the middle of the house. And I thought, okay, so these two things come together, and it'd be so theatrical to have the line down the middle. But I was terrified to write it, because I thought, how do I write the Israelis? How can I do it? No one will buy them. I'm half Palestinian. They'll all say she's being biased or whatever. And so I just sat on the idea for a really long time. And then there was a call out, a writing competition, and the rules were the play had to be 20 minutes long, and it could only have 4 actors in it. Suddenly, it seemed easy to write it. Yeah, so that's how it came to be in this form. And yeah, other people have said maybe I should write the boys in, maybe we should get something of them in prison. But there's something about the succinctness of it that seems to work and seems to appeal to people.
Yes.
Good question.
Just on that point, I was wondering about the absence of the men, and even Ahmed seems to be, if not absent, retreating. It seems like quite a definite choice for you to write it. What can you?
Yeah, it was different reasons. One is that, in my experience, I wrote a radio play for Radio 4, which was called The Deportation Room, and it's a series of interviews with Gazans who are trying to leave Gaza just to go on holiday or whatever, and about their experiences. And I interviewed lots of Gazans, and also my experience with my family. A lot of my family is still in the West Bank. It's the women who are the ones who are really brave and really strong and really forthright. And I don't know if that's because they're less targeted or they feel more protected in some way. I don't know if it's because of that. But I really feel like it's the women who are kind of pushing things a lot. And so it's sort of that. And also because I know loads of really brilliant actresses who don't get enough work. I try to write interesting roles for women of all ages. So yeah, that's
because you always see it from the war side, from the soldiers. It's always like men that are kind of needed for those things. So it's very, I've wondered, very domesticated. Would be like. Have you been over much?
Yes, and a mix. It totally depends, and it depends on what religion they are or how religious they are and what they are. But one thing that, in my experience, unites them all is they all have an opinion. You know, and it's very different from the way that Palestinian women are portrayed in the media. I have a really massive problem with the way Palestinians, full stop Arabs, but Palestinians in particular, are portrayed in the media, and it's a big reason why I keep getting a lot of, because I'm half Irish, and I get a lot from my Irish family saying, why are you not writing more plays about Ireland? And I'm like, well, you've got quite a few. So
was lovely about it is the Twitter reference, because I suppose we think that it's so tough, and I know it is obviously very tough, but to have something that's so universal is a lovely kind of modern token, because it could be, if you didn't have that, it could be either of the dates you mentioned in it.
Absolutely. And I actually I sent a draft of it to my brother who read it, and he was like, you do know that by putting the Twitter reference in, you're locating them in a very specific part of Jerusalem, because there's no... Stop being so specific. But I think also Twitter has become much more part of the conversation everywhere, but after the Arab Spring, all of that stuff that happened in Egypt and Twitter, it's sort of a big part of, and it's how particularly, this time last year, I lived on Twitter trying to find out about my friends in Gaza, obviously the generators were down, it was hard to find out information, but yeah, so those forms of communication have opened up the dialogue a lot more, because we can see things and have access to things that the normal media, the mainstream media wouldn't show. So yeah, I think but yeah, I like the idea that places it very much now. But yeah, if you took that reference out, it could be any time.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions from the audience?
Hannah, actually, I'd be really interested to know when you wrote it, because I know there's certainly a date, the 2014 date, but when did you write it, and was it very close to last year, and how was that for you, writing that? Well, it must have been very difficult.
I wrote it, when did I write it? I wrote it in 2012, I think, or 2013, so it was before last year.
Right.
And actually, I wrote it at a time where I wrote quite a few plays in succession, short plays. I just had a baby, and I was doing a lot of writing in a fog of kind of tiredness, and actually that seemed to work quite well. I didn't really worry too much or intervene too much. I just just got on with it and wrote stuff. It's always difficult to write things very close when there's big events happen. There was in January. At the end of last year, I was commissioned to write a short play that was in response to boycott and censorship for a series of plays that were on in London at a site-specific venue. And they were all by writers who were quite political, and they were all sort of in response to boycott and freedom of speech. And we were commissioned to write them in November, and they went on in January, 1 week after the Charlie Hebdo. So it was really, really difficult, because everyone in the audience thought, wow, these plays were in response to that. Yeah. And I felt I had to be really vocal and say, no, they're really not. Because I think actually artists need more space and time, which is why actually this is great timing for this festival, because we've had a year to contemplate on the horror. And it's really important to kind of to remember and think about it and talk about it and not let it go unmarked.
Yeah, and it's not just a knee-jerk reaction either. It does have that beautiful kind of truth to it, and it's about family as much as it's about those events as well. So it's gorgeous.
I just wanted to say that was the image of just the house being divided. It's fantastic, and I think the language, that's what I really liked about it. And I know this is a political play, but it's just very beautiful, all of it. So well done.
Thank you very much. Well, actually, listening to these guys say the words, I thought, hold on, did I write this with Irish voices in my head? It's really to work. It's like it was written for you.
I'm really glad you mentioned the steptoe thing, because it really kind of got that, the claustrophobic vibe of steptoe off it, and I think the play really highlights the absurdity of some of the occupation stuff. I mean, we've a line down the thing, this is a real thing. There's people whose houses, an imaginary border in Jerusalem goes through their house, so they're not allowed into one room. I mean, it's stuff that in a way you couldn't make up, and you say this happens, and I'm involved in activism, this stuff, it says, people go, I don't believe you, no, it's true, right? So I really enjoyed the play for highlighting that kind of aspect of it. But I have a question really. One perhaps reading of, I don't know if this is your intention, right, is that the house is Palestine, right? And you know, you have like 1948 is one side of the room, and 1967 and onwards is encroaching in the side that Palestinians are in. It doesn't really end in a particularly hopeful note. Like there's Michael has actually starred in Return to Haifa, which was on here last year, and that ended on a much more defiant note. I mean, they leave the house, but they say, you know, we'll be back, basically, right? Whereas yours is kind of like they're leaving, the mother comes back, whether she knows she's going to die or not. How do you, like, to me that doesn't seem hopeful. Do you have hope? And if you do, as a Palestinian, where do you see that hope coming from?
I do have hope.
Good.
I don't think I'd write plays if I didn't have hope. But I also, and I think actually the thing, I was really pleased that people laughed because there was a reading of this in London and people were a little bit like, we must laugh. I was like, please laugh. But, so I think actually Beckett and existentialism and all that like humour really works very well with, you know, drawing parallels with the Palestinian experience, because it is this kind of all Kafka, you know, this things happening again and again and it being ridiculous. And I do have hope because of things like this, and because in the last 15 years I notice a difference in people's reaction to me when I say that I'm Palestinian, you know, that I'm half Palestinian. People are less like either I don't know what that is, or oh, is that Pakistan? No. People sort of are more engaged, and that I think it can only be a good thing, because if people know about and understand what's happening, then that's good. But by the same token, it's so frustrating that so many people having to die before anything is changing, and that it's, you know, that it's people on the ground that are having to make the changes happen, not people who have power. But I do have hope, and I do think my plays are hopeful. But I know what you mean. The ending is you know, a bit sad. But the family get out, and Maha is the hope really in that play, because she says, no, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to stay. And you know, so many Palestinians, I admire every Palestinian who stays in Palestine, because what a difficult time. Lots of my family, you know, their lives are really, really tough. And I was moaning last week because my water got cut off, and then within sort of 5 minutes I went, I'm going to stop moaning now, because this happens all the time in Gaza. I need to stop moaning. And I know that it will be back on within 12 hours, or I'll get some kind of refund. Doesn't happen. So, yeah, I think Maha's the hope is my answer, and I think actually it's the young generation of Palestinians who are coming up and staying there, who are going to, or who go and educate themselves and go back, and they're the kind of future. Yeah.